This has been a secret for 3 weeks. So I think you should reveal what took place 3 weeks ago that not only let us not do the podcast for the last 3 weeks, but a lot of people probably are wondering why that was the case. So if you want to take over, let us know.
Yeah, if I wanted to take over. Well, and has it been 3 weeks? Let me look at the date. Yeah, it was on March the 21st at about 6:30 p.m. I was just here at my house. As a matter of fact, I was scheduled to leave the next day on the 22nd to go to LA or Anaheim for the WonderCon. My buddy, my Headlocks comic guy, Mike Kingston, was going to be out there, and we had us a space all at the big WonderCon. It was going to be the first time I'd ever been to that one in Anaheim. We were going to go to Disney World the next day as well, and so it was. But this was on a Wednesday. We were going to leave that for that on Tuesday, and then of course we were all thinking about the hosting the down in New Orleans at WrestleMania, hosting the Hall of Fame, and then we were talking about doing something with. I think at that time, I don't know if they remembered, or I don't know if they had already told us that JR and I were going to call the Battle Royal at that time or not. I think maybe they had, but anyway, just we had a big week, big couple weeks coming up ahead of us. But let me go back to Wednesday afternoon, around 6:30 in the evening. I had a stroke, just kind of crazy out of the clear blue. Sort of. I mean, I was feeling basically fine. And you and I have talked about the story. I don't know how is the best way to go into telling exactly how this happened without telling exactly how it happened. But Lauren and I were together, and you may have to help me here a little bit, Glenn, how the best way to phrase.
You were expressing love for each other in a certain way.
That's a very good description. And anyway, at the end of that, I got up and I said something to Lauren. I didn't really feel anything. I said something to Lauren, and she said, "What did you say?" And I realized then that whatever I said didn't sound right. And I just said then, I said, "I don't know. Did I just say something that didn't sound right?" And she said, "Yeah, you did." And then she looked at me. We like made eye contact, and she said, "Oh my God, Jerry, go look in the mirror." And I'm thinking, what? So I walk around to the bathroom there, look in the mirror, and my whole right side of my mouth is like drooping, like all the way down to my chin. Wow. And I looked at Lauren, and at that point I said, I couldn't even speak. And she screamed, "Oh my God, Jerry, you're having a stroke." And so, we live about maybe 5 minutes from the Baptist East Hospital here in Memphis, and she didn't even want to call an ambulance. She said, "Just get in the car real quick." And she figured she could get me there before an ambulance could. And she was right. As a matter of fact, they all said that was really a helpful thing that we actually came in the car. Got to the emergency room, went right in, and they just looked at me just looked at me and said, come on, you're having a stroke. Put me right back into the emergency room. They checked, my blood pressure was 256 over 145. Yeah, so that's, I guess, what made me stroke out, so to speak. And so then it was just one thing happened after another. It was sort of crazy in the fact that I'm sure a lot of people have, been in similar situations, but it's like all of a sudden they bring a television into the room instead of an actual neurosurgeon at that point. That's the way they can first do it. And this this neurosurgeon that comes on television with me was out in California, and he's looking at me on a TV camera, and I'm looking at him on a TV camera, and he's asking me to do all of these different tests and all these different. Of course, there were like 4 other people and nurses and people in the room, but the main guy was on television. It's crazy. So anyway, they're asking me to do all these things. Then they took me immediately down for a CAT scan, and that's where they found out it was a brain hemorrhage, which is not something you want to hear. It went, it was blood bleeding out onto your brain. And I guess, excuse me, that's like the 2 different kind of strokes. You either have that kind or you have one that's caused by a clot. And a lot of times the blood or the strokes caused by blood clots can be cleared up really quickly if you get there really quickly with a blood thinning agent or something like that that'll clear the clot up. But when it's bleeding out onto your brain, there's not really a whole lot they can do about it. There's just try to control it as quickly as they can with blood pressure medicine or whatever. But once the blood bleeds out, there's nothing they can do about it. And the more that it bleeds out onto your brain, the more damage you're going to have from whatever, I guess from whatever brain cells get covered up. They try to explain all this to me. It's like a big hematoma once that blood goes out on your brain, like a big bruise in another part of your body, and it takes a while for that blood to dissipate back in. I mean, a long time. It takes a while for it to dissipate back into your off of your brain. So anyway, it was a pretty scary situation. I was when they got me back from the CAT scan, they informed me too that where the blood was bleeding out was on how do they say it, the cognitive part of my brain, which controls your speech and part of your memory. And so at this time I really couldn't say anything. And I could hear everybody and could I knew the answers to the questions they were asking me. I couldn't say the right words. So they wound up putting me in a little bit later on, and after a couple hours, they put me into the intensive care unit, the neuro intensive care unit there at Baptist Hospital. I was in there all day Thursday. They were just monitoring the blood pressure, checking on. They took me down Thursday and gave me a big, extensive. Oh, this thing was miserable. Almost a 2-hour-long MRI, where they put you in that big, I don't know, some kind of big tank. You had to be perfectly still. They put this like a helmet on you, and then all these real loud, wild noises and stuff are going on while this thing is going through every part of your brain, and that was miserable. But that was to see if there was any other part of my brain that was, I guess, affected by that. So anyway, that was Thursday. Couldn't speak, and Lauren was there, of course, in the room with me and everything. And she was trying just to get me to, and the doctors and the nurses and speech therapists, people would come in, and it was so crazy. Like they would ask me, just different things, simple things like, who's the president? Main thing they ask you, is what's your birthday? And of course, my birthday was November 29th, 1949, but I just couldn't, in my mind, I knew exactly what it was, but I couldn't get my mouth I couldn't form. It was almost like I couldn't say or form the first letter of any word that I wanted to say. And and Lauren said, well, look, let me ask you something that you should probably know. Let's play the wife game. What? She said, what was the name of your first wife? Brian and Kevin's mother. And of course, her name was Kay, and I couldn't say it. I mean, it was just like I knew what it was, but I couldn't say it. And she said, okay, what was the name of it? Well, then finally she said it was Kay. And then after she said it, I could almost mouth it, a little bit then. And she said, okay, what was the name of your second wife? Which was Paula. And I swear, as soon as she said, what was the name of your second wife? It was like I tried to say Paula, and I don't even know what. She said, well, what letter does it start with? And I said, A. She said, no. And it was just, it was just the craziest thing, man. Your mind, your brain is just, it's just unbelievable what it can, what can happen to you, at a moment's notice and everything. So anyway, we got up to the third. Like I finally, I never could say Paula or Stacy, and then what was really sad was then she said, okay, what's my name? And I mean, I think I started crying or something there for a minute, because it was like I could not say her name, and she's sitting right there with me, So anyway, the neurosurgeons came in, and I think I had 4 different ones. They were all really good, really great, and everything. But the one woman, Lauren asked her, said, well, how long does something like this take before it comes back? And she said, well, that just, like I said, depends on the amount of the amount of blood that went out onto the certain brain cells, and if they were damaged by not getting oxygen while the blood was on them. It was a bunch of things. But anyway, basically, she said, from what it looks like in his case, maybe 6 months. And then she said, maybe a year. And then she said, sometimes it doesn't ever always come back. And so then that's something you certainly don't want to hear. And I'm thinking just like, and I hadn't told, I think I told, I don't know if I told Lauren not to try to explain to her not to call the WWE people or anything, or Kevin Dunn, of course, who's my, the TV boss guy, and who controls everything that the TV people do. And so, but anyway, she told me, she said, look, I know you're going to get mad, but I called Kevin Dunn and I told him what happened. And she was right. I did get mad and everything, but he said, just don't, he said, for you not to worry about anything, everything's good. But all I was thinking about was, Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, and all this kind of stuff that was coming up. Yeah. So then Friday, still in the intensive care, and honestly, I think they had the blood pressure back under control. Well, no, they did. I mean, it wasn't anywhere like what it was when I came in there, but still, the speech was actually even worse. So they came in late Friday night, and they said, Jerry, we're going to take you down for another CAT scan, because your speech is worse than it was yesterday. So we're going to make sure there's no more bleeding or something. They were thinking that maybe it's still bleeding. So they took me down at like 1:30 in the morning on Friday night, or actually would have been Saturday morning, and did another CAT scan, came back up and read that, and they said, well, no, the bleeding is the same. There's no new bleeding or anything like that. But, we were just like wondering, we did that because the speech is not any better today. So I went to, probably went to sleep about 2:00 in the morning on Saturday morning, and woke up at 8:45. I'll never forget it. I looked over at the clock, 8:45. I looked down at Lauren. She was already awake, and I looked over at her, and I said, my birthday's November 29th, 1945, 1949. I said it right. I didn't say it wrong. I said, my birthday's November 29th, 1949, and hi, Lauren. Good morning. How you doing? And it was like crazy. It was like my voice was completely back. And it was like all of a sudden nothing was wrong. And the doctors came in, the neurosurgeons came in and said, wow, the one guy said, man, you like really are made out of steel or something. But he said, we don't understand this. And so later on that day, they moved me into just a regular room. And then I came home the next day on let's see. Yeah, well, I don't know if I came home. Yeah, I think I came home Saturday night.
Yeah.
And so, and then, and Lauren had asked the doctor the day before on Friday. She said, he's supposed to be doing this big thing for what he's really worried about. He's supposed to be doing the Hall of Fame thing in WrestleMania, and the doctor told her, said, well, he said, I don't, that ain't gonna happen. And that was, when I wasn't talking, he said, I wouldn't tell him that yet, but that just ain't gonna happen. And so anyway, then, like I said, the next day, my voice came back. I started talking, and they let me out Saturday night. And then, of course, we went to do WrestleMania and Hall of Fame and everything. And I didn't really tell anybody. I did tell, or we did tell Kevin Dunn, and then Kevin Dunn, I think, told me later, he said, look, I did tell Vince and I did tell Triple H, but they said they weren't going to tell anybody. So it was like amazing that the story didn't, especially in the wrestling business, anybody that finds out anything, the kind of story gets out. But nobody, then when I did Hall of Fame, nobody even knew that anything had happened.
It's amazing. And I'm sitting here, in Cleveland while you're down in New Orleans and doing all these, WrestleCon, and we're going to talk about, you're shooting a fireball at someone's genitals, and you're doing all these appearances, and then the Hall of Fame comes around, and, you're talking coming out every half an hour
for 2 days. Did the Hall of Fame last 2 days, or was that just part of my stroke that I was remembering?
I think Hillbilly Jim is still talking to this day. He hasn't left the arena. But no, you did the Hall of Fame. You looked great. And then you did you called the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal match with JR and Saxon, and you did terrific. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is the guy that just suffered a stroke, couldn't talk just a week and a half ago, and here he is in front of millions of people on TV, and no one has a clue. And I'm shocked too that this didn't get leaked out. Because, I was thinking, WrestleMania weekend, everybody in who's who in wrestling is down there, and I know you probably told close buddies, but just imagine, like what you said, anything and everything gets leaked in professional wrestling, from a finish to backstage brawls to guys fighting, and no one ever leaked it out. No one ever reported it. No one even gave a little hint that Jerry Lawler suffered a stroke.
Well, I think the very few people, I mean, I really did not mention it to hardly anybody. But the very few people that I did mention it to, I said, I really I'm hoping that this doesn't get out until after WrestleMania or anything. So if I'm going to tell you this, but please don't tell anybody. And nobody did. It was great. It was amazing.
Yeah. And it's a, that's why we didn't do the show for a few weeks, is because obviously you suffered a stroke and you needed to rest your voice. And then the WrestleMania week, we decided, hey, you're leaving for WrestleMania. There's a lot more important things to do other than the podcast that weekend with Hall of Fame and WrestleMania. You need your voice in tip-top shape. And, we decided to come back the week after WrestleMania to talk about this. And like I said, I'm very, very surprised that no dirt sheets picked up Jerry Lawler's stroke. And I kept searching on Twitter. I'm surprised it wasn't trending.
I know, I did too.
I kept searching to see if somebody would say, Jerry Lawler I'm hearing Jerry Lawler had a stroke. I'm hearing Jerry Lawler was in the hospital. Nothing popped up. And
well, I think probably the main thing too was the fact that the minute I got out of the hospital, I just went back to normal life.